Good morning. It is day 7 of the Sean Diddy Combs federal trial. Let's jump into what we have so far. David James, a former assistant to Combs, is back on the stand today. The jury entered, and prosecutor Christy Slavic is going to continue questioning him. Now, David James, an assistant for Combs from 2007 to 2009, testified that he did not personally observe physical violence between Combs and Ventura, but did hear them argue about her career more than once. In those arguments, she would express a desire to branch out more into modeling and acting, but Combs would tell her she had to focus on her music career, according to James's testimony. Keep in mind that James worked for Combs during the early portion of his relationship with Ventura. Ventura testified that she signed a contract with Combs' company, Bad Boy Records, in early 2006. The pair first began dating around 2007 and split in 2018. Yesterday, James testified that Combs had several girlfriends while James worked for him. He described Kim Porter, who he shared 3 children with, as Combs's main girlfriend, and then listed 4 other women, including Ventura, who were other girlfriends. James also testified that he was on the computer at Combs' home one night when Combs was out at a club with Ventura and another assistant along with security. As soon as he entered the door, he beelined straight for me and pulled up the computer's search history, James said. Combs told him that someone had written a blog post lying about him hitting Ventura, and he wanted to see if James had written it, the former assistant testified. James said he did not see Ventura that night, but 2 days later, Combs directed him to bring her food at a nearby hotel. When James brought the food to her hotel room, he was surprised to see a member of Combs' staff answer the door instead of Ventura herself. She stayed at the hotel for approximately a week, according to his testimony. James also testified that he often set up hotel rooms for Combs. If Combs was staying in New York, his favorite hotel was the Trump International. James said that seems appropriate. Just saying. James also said he would set up things for Combs before his arrival, including clothing, a toiletry bag, a medicine bag, food and drinks. He said he would organize a collection of about 40 products, mostly skincare, for Combs in the hotel bathroom. The medicine bag typically carried between 25 to 30 pill bottles, which included ecstasy and Percocet, according to James. Some bottles were unmarked, he said. Combs' security always carried Combs' Louis Vuitton bag, which held personal items and typically $10,000 or more in cash. James said he would often replenish items for Combs during trips. If he was restocking food and drinks, James said he would pay for them and get reimbursed by Bad Boy Entertainment. When he restocked personal items such as baby oil, lubricant, and condoms, James said he would ask security to be reimbursed from the cash in Combs' bag. When asked if Combs would stay alone when he traveled, James said, "I don't think Mr. Combs ever stayed alone." While he worked for Combs, James typically Ventura would stay with Combs, but there were other women as well, according to his testimony. Additional updates will be linked in part 2, which will be in the comments. Part 2. Former assistant David James uh, testified that occasionally Combs would ask him to bring certain items, usually an iPod or food, to his hotel rooms while he was staying there. He recounted an incident in Miami around 2008 when Combs asked him to bring an iPod to his hotel room. James said he took him about an hour to get there, and when he knocked on the door, no one answered. He entered the room with his own key and saw Ventura lying on her back in the hotel room with a white comforter up to her neck. She did not move when I entered the room, he testified. Combs was in the shower, he said. James mentioned that he did not speak with Combs or Ventura about the incident afterwards because it wasn't his job to discuss their personal affairs. James also stated that from 2007 to 2009, when he was an assistant, he saw Combs take drugs and give them to his friends. On a couple of occasions, James procured drugs for Combs' friends, according to his testimony. A person called One Stop often brought drugs to Combs, James said. James understood Combs often took Percocet while he was operating his businesses and preferred to take ecstasy at night. David James detailed several occasions where he said he supplied Combs' friends with drugs. On a trip with Combs to Saint-Tropez, a friend of Combs texted James asking him to get cocaine, according to James's testimony. James said he arranged for the cocaine for Combs' friend, but said Combs didn't ask him to do it. He said he assumed he had to. On another occasion, during a party in LA, James recalled how Combs sent him back to the house to get ecstasy for a friend. James said he went back to Combs' house to get the ecstasy from Combs' medicine bag and brought it back to the party. What do you put on a resume to get a job like that? And how do you know what? Too many questions. I don't want to know. I kind of do, but no. Okay. So David James testified about an incident when one of Combs's Cartier bracelets went missing, prompting his security to search through all of his then girlfriend's belongings. James said he felt he couldn't refuse the search. On two other occasions when Combs's possessions went missing, James had to take a lie detector test administered by a man who claimed to have formerly worked for the FBI, he testified. It was very intimidating, he said. On both occasions, James's results showed no discrepancies, he said. And this is where the power dynamic comes in. This is where the intimidation aspect comes in. So for those of y'all that are like, oh, they could have left. They could have said no. I don't think y'all realize what all goes into intimidating people. James said one of Combs' security agents told him that another former employee, Capricorn Clark, also had to take a lie detector test previously. First of all, dude, why all your stuff coming up missing? The prosecution's direct questioning of James finished up, and then defense attorney Mark Agnifilio questioned James on cross-examination. Yes, that is the same Agnifilio family where the partner, the wife, is representing the Luigi Mangiani. David James testified about an occasion when he went to Combs' security guard at a diner to get food for Combs and the staff. When he got there, the security guard saw Combs' rival, Marion Suge Knight, and approached him. They talked briefly before the guard and James went inside to order. When they went back to Combs' house, Combs and Ventura were outside the house arguing. Ventura looked like she had been crying. Combs then ordered James to drive him and the security guard back to the diner to look for Knight, James said. Combs sat in the back seat with 3 handguns in his lap, James testified. Knight was gone when they got back to the restaurant. James said he was shook up by the incident. It was the first time he felt he was in danger as the assistant to Combs. More in part 3, which will be linked in the comments. Part 3. Defense attorney Mark Agnifilo referenced documents from David James's meetings with the government, highlighting one where his account of the Mel's Diner event before he returned to the home of Sean Combs. He said the government had instructed him not to say anything that could incriminate himself. The documents also indicate at one point he told them some of the events took place inside the diner, even though he testified today that they occurred outside the diner. I think these are inaccurate notes, James said. He maintained that his recollection of the majority of the event has remained consistent. Agnifilo asked James whether he spoke up at any point when Combs was allegedly telling him to get back in the car to return to Mel's Diner, or when Combs was sitting in the back seat with 3 guns. The motherfucker had 3 guns. Who arguing with a motherfucker with 3 guns that likes to pop perks? James said, respectfully, sir, you have someone with 3 guns in this close proximity. I didn't think I had the option to say something. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Because I feel like if he would have said something, he wouldn't be there today to testify. He'd have been carried by 6. Just throwing that out there. Agnifilo asked James if he was granted immunity for his testimony. James said he wasn't sure of the details that were brokered by his attorney, but he believes he signed a proffer agreement, a type of agreement that gives a person some protection from prosecution. I mean, he was procuring illicit pharmaceuticals for the man and his friends, so Can we get to the meat and potatoes of the Q&A? Like, the jury has good senses. Like, they understand the criminality of being an assistant to Combs. Now, James did testify that before he began working as an assistant to Combs, he was a fan of the Sean John Combs clothing line. James said he knew Combs to be a successful, self made man who was a brilliant marketer. I just respect Mr. Combs from a business perspective. Understandable. On the outside looking in, and you're only seeing what you can see through the stained glass window, it would be the ideal job to have. Especially as an assistant, you're thinking, oh, you're going to learn the ropes and you could, possibly branch out on your own one day. You didn't know that he was going to allegedly be a fucking psychopath. During cross examination, James, former assistant to Combs, was pressed about his travel with Combs. James had testified yesterday he traveled extensively with the music mogul, including internationally. Today, defense attorney Agnifilo asked if these were business trips or personal trips. James said there was a fine line since Combs' personal life and business life blended together. He described them as business-oriented trips. Even on vacation, he's always working, James said. That's no secret. The defense also suggested repeatedly that James actually left D-Rock, one of Diddy Combs' security guards, at the restaurant and went back with Combs to get him. James denied this each time, testifying that it wouldn't have made sense to leave him there with Suge Knight outside wielding a gun. Bingo boingo. And why would you go get the bigger target to come back to get a security guard? That's ass backwards. The security guard would be procured to go get Diddy. Like, if y'all gonna come up with a lie, come better. But, child, part 4 in the comments. Part 4. Former assistant to Sean Combs, David James, testified that he typically rode in a second car to accompany Combs wherever he went. James said there was usually a second car traveling with Combs for security reasons. Combs' security personnel typically operated a second car to the right of the vehicle transporting Combs to prevent anyone from pulling up on him and potentially assassinating him, James said. Wonder when that habit started. Now, James is an important prosecution witness for his ability to tell jurors what it was like in the music mogul's inner circle. He is key to establishing the RICO charges against Sean Diddy Combs, and this is according to a plethora of legal experts. Now, James did testify that one of Combs' assistants had to go to the hospital for dehydration after working with Combs for 24 hours straight. He said the work was demanding, but he was prepared for the moment and enjoyed it at times. He testified there was a common saying among Combs' security guards: "You want what rhymes with tired? Fired?" Yeah, that's dead. Absolutely the fuck not. Now, James also testified that when he purchased personal items, including condoms, baby oil, and personal lubricant for Combs, he would ask for security to pay him back in cash from Combs' bag. If you remember, Combs generally keeps approximately $10,000 in cash with him at all times. James, according to testimony, James said he was instructed not to submit these items for reimbursement through the company because they were items he didn't want to have a record for. Why? If all of these things are consensual between you and your partner and it's just a little freaky deaky, why? Because Baby Earl ain't, everybody, you Baby Earl for different reasons. You should be using some condoms, especially if you like to be swanging. So, defense attorney Agnifilo asked James to confirm that he meant the company didn't pay for these items. I mean, it's all his money, James responded. Exactly. Like he's getting reimbursed for every fucking thing else that he travels with. Why not the Baby Earl? Now, Combs had a list of preferred items allowed for a consistent environment, according to James. He said These are typically things that would be on a rider. Like Heinz ketchup, for example, he said ketchup was a big item that he always needed for his food. So it was just It was just the consistency to create the consistent environment. Um, I see why him and Trump like each other. James also testified that there was a camaraderie among Combs' staff and that they would often say Combs' record label, Bad Boy Records, was a family, a dysfunctional, abusive family, I guess. He also testified that he didn't tell Combs about the cocaine procurement for his friend, as we learned earlier. He just assumed that it was okay with Combs because of all the other stuff that he was doing for Combs. Uh, he also testified that Combs called Ventura moldable early in their relationship. Um, and then the defense finished up its cross examination of Mr. David James. They took a 10-minute break. And then during the cross examination of David James, it was discussed when Combs confronted James about the assistant's altercation with the chef. Uh, and that's what we know thus far. When more updates come through, I will bring them to you. But as always, let me know what you think in the comments.